couple months ago, I began my classes at Chico State University. As I was preparing for my freshman year, I was able to find everything that I needed except for a laptop. I'm not exactly very good at letting a dollar go for something, especially when I could need it for something for less. I scoured the internet for good deals on laptops, finding none that suit my fragile habits. Classes were only 2 weeks away, and I was becoming desperate for a computer. Several days later, I saw an ad in the newspaper for a laptop that was being sold for $600, and not too far from where I live. It was a very nice Dell laptop too, seeming odd, and it was being sold for almost $1,000 less than the store price. I drove to the seller's address the following day. The house was farther out in the city, butting up to a dense forest. Outside the house was an old Chevrolet and a mass of old signs and other various vintage-looking items. I rang the doorbell, and a thin man in a flannel jacket came to the door. When I asked about the laptop, he looked almost relieved and told me that he was ready to sell it immediately. Luckily, I came with cash in hand, and after the proof of the good condition, I went home with a new computer. Excited to have my first self-bought laptop, I powered it up and began uploading my own programs and applications on it. Upon searching the hard drive, I found a folder hidden away on it, which was odd because the man selling it told me that the memory was wiped out clean and ready for a fresh start. The folder was titled 9/17/10, presumably a date. I opened the folder, revealing 6 videos and 3 pictures. Curiosity got the best of me. I decided to watch the videos. The first video was simply titled 001. The video was shot from a shaky camcorder inside of a vehicle, recording a woman walking out of the bar and getting into the car at night. After a couple of seconds, the woman drove off, and almost immediately the person recording the video began to drive after her. The video ended after 24 seconds. It almost seemed like the cameraman had been waiting for the woman for a long time. Come to think of it, I wasn't too alarmed by the time, just a little unsettled. I opened the next video, filed 002. I assumed that this was the next part of the first video. My presumption was right. As it began with the camera on top of the console, facing out of the windshield, it was raining now, leading me to believe that this was short while after the first video ended. I could barely make out the vehicle of the 2 cars ahead of this one, the same car that the woman was in, that the bar she left in. This went on for an unsettling 47 seconds before the camera cuts out. I began to get a little nervous, fearing that this might take a turn for worse. But as I was watching the television show, I wanted to see how this was headed. Not totally concerned yet, I decided to press on. The third video was of course titled 003. This was the one that got me officially concerned. The clip began from the same shaking hands for the first clip. It was now pouring rain outside of the car, and I could barely make out the figure in a fur coat with an umbrella walking out to the front door of a house. I could only assume that this person was, and whose house this belonged to. The figure had entered the house and closed the door. The following stillness greatly unnerved me. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of rain dumping on the car. After roughly 2 minutes of this nerve-wracking nothingness, the lights inside the house cut out. Another minute or so went by before the camera was placed onto the console again, and the sound of a person exiting the car broke the stillness. After the car door quietly closed, another figure, this time hooded, could be seen walking towards the house. I began to feel a knot tightening inside of my stomach. As the stranger walked around to the back of the house, whoever this person was, they definitely weren't supposed to be there. After a couple of seconds, the lights to the house cut out. It was pitch black, and only the rain alerted me that the camera was still rolling. The video ended about 9 seconds of rain and darkness. I was now pretty sure that this was not an innocent little project of anything of that nature, and I began to feel stupid for checking this laptop seller credibility. Was this person stalking the woman, the same person whom I met earlier? Although the whole experience, I had a doormat through the back of the head to call the police, but I wasn't ready just yet. Reluctantly, now I began the fourth video, 004. It was dark again, but the rain had stopped, and I was left with only silence. Not long after the clip began, I began to make sound of footsteps on gravel, getting louder as someone was approaching the vehicle. The car door opened and a dome light was turned on, and I could tell the camera was on the floor of the car, pointing up towards the roof. I heard some fumbling in the background. Suddenly a thump sound heard from the back of the truck. An arm abruptly obstructed the camera's view, and a large strap could be seen being pulled out from the car. I had only one scenario running through my head, and I hoped it wasn't true. The person picked up the camera and put it back into the console and began to back up. They drove for a good 3 minutes before parking in a branch off the road and exiting the car to work on the load that they were carrying. 6 minutes after, the car was moving again to a different location, and the camera was picked up and carried unhanded away from the car. I could see now that it was the same shitbook truck that was in front of the seller's house. I was ready to call the cops on this creep when the camera turned towards the house. It was a completely different house than the one I visited. I was a little relieved by this, though it didn't prove anything. As the fourth video came to an end, I was wondering whether or not I was prepared to see what came next. I could only hope that this was a prank, or at least had a very happy ending. 005 began inside the house. It was extremely dark, and the only thing that I could see was the figure that would only occasionally walk in front of the camera. It was also quiet for the first few minutes, minus the occasional barking of dogs outside. Eventually, a small sound started to appear. The small sound soon escalated to a loud, muffled scream. Shaking and struggling sounds became more apparent as time went on, as well as crying. A light abruptly came on, and the camera was lifted and panned to the center of the room, revealing a beaten and bloody woman tied to a chair. From what I could make out, this was, in fact, the woman from the bar. The camera zoomed in on her face in what seemed like an eternity before stopping. I couldn't believe this was happening. The original hope was that the movie or something like that had long since dismissed. With only one video remained, I was beginning to fear for my own safety. I locked my door and closed my blinds and pushed onward. I began 006 with a small hope that this woman was still alive and that I could save her. The final installment of this horror show began in a bathroom setting. The camera was placed on the counter facing the mirror in which I could see a door. The only sound I could make was a familiar sound that destroyed my hopes. Power tools. I sat in front of the screen for what felt like hours before the sound stopped. More silence, then heavy footsteps, accompanied by what sounded like something being dragged. The doorknob turned and the door was pushed open. Out of the darkness of the rest of the house appeared a middle-aged woman dressed in what I could only describe as a lab attire, sporting as a respiratory and a pair of long rubber gloves. This, for some strange reason, gave me a small amount of relief. In the reflection, the woman struggled to drag something to the bathtub. As she hoisted it into the tub, I could see it was a large garbage bag. I felt like I was dreaming. It was like I was watching a horror movie unfolding on the screen. She lifted up the bag up from the tub, now empty except for whatever entrails that dropped out. She picked up the camera and placed it on the ground facing the tub. On the floor in front of the bathtub was an assortment of coarses, substance, and several other empty containers. The woman began to dump the liquid into the tub, which was followed by an awful, awful sound that I can only describe as pop rocks mixed with Coke. The video ended as I was left befuddled and panicked. I finally opened the pictures as the first picture of the truck. The second was of a girl tied up before she was beaten. The third picture was of a corrupted file, noticed, but maybe it was a good thing. I managed to keep 2 of the pictures before I handed the laptop over to the police. I was reimbursed my $600 along with the bonus. Apparently, the victim was the young girlfriend of the older woman's ex-husband. The older woman was arrested almost a year before, but was freed of all charges due to lack of evidence, and the ex-husband was incarcerated instead. I guess this was the missing link. I hope this would solve the mystery of the unanswered questions, although I'm not sure for who the man in the flannel jacket was, or how he got a hold of the laptop, or how he owns the same truck as the murderer. I guess I'll just have to leave that to